Welcome to another episode of the Zen Watercooler podcast. And today's episode is going to be a little bit uncomfortable. What we're going to be talking about here is failure. And even just mentioning the word failure sometimes sends shivers up people's spines. So I hope you join me in this episode. This is an audio-only podcast. So if you're out driving, if you're working out in the gym, maybe you're sitting in the dark after a week at Las Vegas, this is the podcast for you. Now I'm going to be talking about print on demand, but this also applies to other areas of our lives. Now, I'm going to be giving out some tips in this podcast on how you can deal with failure and how you can actually embrace it to make your life better, not just in print on demand, but in all areas of your life. So let's really drill down on what failure means. You know, when you're an adult, failure typically means that you've set out to do something and you didn't achieve that objective. And this can be uncomfortable because as we get older, as we turn into adults, we typically become smarter over time. We gain experience. We learn from our mistakes. We become experts in things. You know, you get a job. You can maybe get, certified as an accountant, or you become a tradesman. There's all sorts of areas of expertise that adults have. But if we wind the clock back, and if we think about being a child, 2-year-old, 4-year-old, even a 6-year-old, relatively speaking, they're all idiots. Now, again, I'm sure your kid is a wonderful kid, but they're not exactly splitting the atom here. They're not doing your taxes. They're not getting promoted. There's no CEO of a company that's like a 6-year-old, right? So relatively speaking, a child is learning all the time. They don't know hardly anything. So that's why they're always asking a bunch of questions. Why is the sky blue? Why is the dog doing whatever the dog's doing? Because the kid doesn't have a base of knowledge to draw on. Now, the reason I bring this up is not to make fun of little Johnny because, hey, he's learning and he's only been on this earth for, 3 years. But my point is, they have no shame. When they ask questions, they don't say, you know what, Mom, I know I'm only 2.5 years old, and I'm really humiliated to ask this, but I'm not really an expert on how cereal works. So could you please explain to me, why when I eat cereal, I get full, and then when I wake up in the morning, I'm hungry. I don't understand this. And again, I apologize. Like, of course, kids don't do that. They just go, wham, I'm hungry. Or they ask questions like, why, where do babies come from? And it's like, oh God, here we go. So kids have no shame in asking and learning. And so that's my first little tip as we jump into failure and we talk about this is I think it's really important to shed the stigma that if you don't know something, this is somehow a problem, that this is somehow, makes you less than. Because when you think about it, everybody's an expert in something. There's something in your life that you're an expert in, but there's also lots of things in our lives that we're not experts in. So for example, I consider myself a print-on-demand guru. I think I'm pretty good at it. I've made lots of money. I've traveled around the world on my hobby income. I'm very proud of that. And I'm not saying that to be braggy. I'm just saying it's something I've worked really hard at. But I've also learned over the years to be an expert. I wasn't always an expert. And there's lots of things I'm not an expert in. I don't know how to lay carpet. I don't know how to fix a toilet. There's lots of things that I don't know how to do. So it doesn't make me better than anyone else. It just means my expertise lies in certain fields. Believe me, if we're on an airplane and the airplane's going down, I'm not the guy you want to try to land the airplane. I'm not a pilot. I have no interest in that stuff. I'm also not a doctor. If you have chest pains, I'm not your guy, okay? You want to make sure that you hook up with proper expertise in your life. Go to a doctor if you have a medical issue. Go to a plumber if you have a plumbing issue. And you've come to the right place here for print-on-demand knowledge. I am your print-on-demand doctor, Dr. Zen Watercooler. So when we talk about failure, the truth is, if you want to be successful in print-on-demand, you're going to fail a bunch of times. And this is just the reality of it. It's very, very unlikely that you're going to upload 10 designs onto Redbubble and start making $1,000 a month. It's just, you might as well throw that expectation out or that wish out. It's simply not going to happen. And this is true not just in print on demand, but in life in general. So I've got just a couple examples that I want to walk through really quickly. The first one is, I'm a comic book guy. I love comic books. And one of my favorite comic book superheroes is Spider-Man. And of course, we've all heard of Spider-Man. He's one of the world's most popular, if not the most popular superhero. Well, there's an artist. His name's Todd McFarlane. And he was really, really popular in the 1990s. He did a Spider-Man comic book that sold millions and millions of copies. Well, the truth is, when Todd McFarlane was first starting out, he wrote to Marvel and he had a portfolio of work that he was submitting, and he got rejected again and again and again. In fact, he got rejected hundreds and hundreds of times. Now, his artwork looked fine. Obviously, he was growing as an artist. He was not as good as perhaps he is when he was at his peak, but he was learning how to get into the business. And that means you're making connections, and you have to put up with rejection after rejection. He's actually kept those hundreds of rejection letters, and he uses them as motivation, not just for himself, but for anyone who's interested. He has a couple videos on YouTube where he talks about them, and he'll mention it in interviews. He uses these letters as motivation to say, hey, I believed in myself even when nobody else would. Another example is the movie star Jim Carrey. Jim Carrey is a really popular comedian. He was big in the 1990s as well. I know I'm dating myself with these 1990s references, but Jim Carrey's a pretty big movie star. But he wasn't always a big movie star. When he first moved to Los Angeles, to Hollywood, he was a complete no-name, and he worked really hard. He auditioned to be on Saturday Night Live. He actually did not get on Saturday Night Live. He failed the audition. That's unheard of. Now, looking back on it, you're like, that's unbelievable. Jim Carrey is a monster comedian, but it wasn't the right fit at the right time. Is that a failure? Well, he learned from it. He pushed forward, and eventually he became a huge success. I want to just talk about my own experience really quickly. You know, my own experience in print on demand is not success only. It's actually fraught with lots of failures, and I've used those failures to grow and to get better. I originally started selling on Etsy, and I was selling digital designs on Etsy and also print-on-demand designs on Etsy. The problem was I did not understand how copyrights and trademarked stuff works. I didn't understand the rules. So I was selling things that I couldn't prove I owned the trademark to, or I couldn't prove that I had the copyright to. Even though the stuff I was selling was legitimate, I didn't save the source material. I didn't save the website links. When I got a strike against me, I didn't know how to respond. I didn't do the proper research. And as a result, I wound up getting banned from Etsy. Now, is this embarrassing to say? I'm not embarrassed by it. I didn't know what I didn't know at the time. So yes, Etsy banned me. Now, there's going to be somebody out there in YouTube land who's going to hear this and go, well, Zen Watercooler got banned from Etsy. He's an idiot. Why should I listen to him? And hey, to each their own. You might want to run away into the night saying that I'm a complete bum, and that's fine. But I will say, everybody at some point is going to get a design rejected. Everybody at some point is probably going to put up with putting a bunch of designs out there and not making sales. So I actually wear that as a badge of honor. I screwed up. I made a mistake. Another one that I actually think is pretty funny, when I first started selling on TeePublic, my very first upload was a beautiful illustration of Spider-Man. And it had the Amazing Spider-Man logo on it. It was a picture of Spider-Man. It was obviously trademarked. But I didn't understand how trademarked stuff operates. I didn't understand the rules. So when I got my account banned, I sent off an email to the TeePublic staff, and I said, this is an outrage. And they came back and they said, do you have the rights to this design? Oh, is that a thing? I didn't know that was a thing. I learned from it. So I don't look down my nose at new artists trying to sell print-on-demand designs, and maybe you make a mistake. Hey, I've been there too. Welcome to the club. Another example of where I've failed is this channel, Zen Watercooler. It wasn't originally a print-on-demand channel. When I first started in the YouTube business, I didn't know anything. So I started up a channel. My background happens to be in facilitation. So I train people in real life. I was a trainer for years. I am still a trainer at my job. And so I think I'm pretty good at training. So I thought, hey, I'll set up a YouTube channel where I'll be able to train people on how to train people. It was like a train the trainer channel. So the idea was I would do like public speaking videos, how to deliver a podcast. And well, I set these videos up and I published them, And big surprise, like nobody cared, right? So I realized pretty quickly I had to pivot my channel if I wanted to get some sort of success, because there's nothing worse than when you crank out some great video and like nobody cares, right? So I realized I needed to build my channel based on what people needed, not based on what I thought people needed. So I pivoted. I made one video about Redbubble, and it was really successful compared to my other videos that were getting like hardly any views. And I was like, oh, the universe is telling me to make more of those videos. And then I was getting feedback through the comments. A lot of it was positive. But hey, some of it continues to this day, continues to be negative. Well, I can take criticism. Is that a failure or is it a learning opportunity? One of the funniest pieces of feedback I received recently is somebody commented that my voice sounds like it's generated by AI. And it's like, I wonder if this is one of those science fiction movies where I wake up and I realize that I'm a robot the whole time. It's like, well, I don't think I am. But hey, maybe I am, right? So if this is robot Zen Watercooler talking, hey, so be it. I know I'm not an artificial intelligent robot, but I thought that was funny. Maybe I need to be a little bit more animated in the way I speak. Or maybe that guy was just having a bad day and he's mad at the AI chatbots. I don't know. I don't even know if it was really an insult, to be honest with you. I'm like, man, maybe it just means that a lot of AI maybe sounds good. I don't know. I'd like to think I have an okay speaking voice. Anyway, it was an interesting piece of feedback that I get. There was another one that I got where I submitted a video. I posted a video and it got a lot of views. And what happens when you get a lot of views is you get a lot of people that are not your core audience watching these videos. And so the comments get more and more snarky the more popular the video gets, because it's really expanding outside of your neighborhood of dedicated fans. So one of the pieces of feedback that I got was that they tried the method that I was describing and it didn't work for them. And they said, this is clickbait video. This is a sham. This is a scam. This guy's a scammer. And I thought, wow, that's actually pretty offensive to my sensibilities. Anybody who knows me, and this is not me trying to be Mr. Wonderful, but anybody who knows me knows that I really pride myself on providing value and free value for anybody that's interested. I answer emails in the evening from people who have asked questions. I answer comments. I'm not doing this to get rich on YouTube. I'm not making a ton of money on YouTube. I have a job and I have a life. So I'm doing this because I truly feel that I'd like to help people, that when I put my head on my pillow at night, I'm like, oh, I'm proud of myself. I tried to make the world a little bit of a better place. And so, that's one of the reasons I operate in the print-on-demand space as well. It makes me happy when I sell a 13-cent sticker on Redbubble, because somewhere in the world, I made somebody happy with my art. And I know it's a 13-cent sticker, but that's what keeps me motivated to get up and continue the grind of print on demand. So anyway, I'm not trying to play the world's tiniest violin here to get sympathy. It's just one of those things where when you receive negative feedback, it can hurt, especially if it doesn't reconcile with your own perspective and your own expectations about what's happening. So let's ask ourselves, what is failure? When we take a look at the word failure, when we take a look at what failure means to us, failure to me in the print-on-demand space means not making sales. Okay? You might say, yeah, that's absolutely accurate. When I upload a bunch of designs and I'm not making sales, that's failure. But I would argue that it's more than just that. It does include that, but there's more to it than that. Failure is also, I think, not meeting your expectations. That's more of a bigger picture comment on what failure is. Failure is not meeting your expectations. So for me, I have 3 expectations that I'm going to reveal for you, that this is what my personal formula for success. So I think that print on demand for myself needs to be fun. If it's not fun, I don't want to do it. I don't want to sit in some sweatshop cranking out designs that I don't really like. I'm motivated by creativity and I'm motivated by fun. So for me, fun and creativity go hand in hand. It needs to be fun. The second success metric that I've got is I need to put in some amount of time every week or every day, and it changes. If I'm on vacation, obviously I'm not going to be working on print on demand to the same extent that I am if I'm at home, but I put in some effort. I was in Italy recently on vacation. I had a nice long vacation in Europe. Well, in the evenings in the hotel, I would spend a half an hour each evening. I'd have a sandwich and a juice, and I would relax on the sofa or the bed, and I would work on Merch by Amazon for half an hour a night. It's not a lot, but I'd upload a couple designs. I'd make sure that all the products were activated. That was a success metric for me. It was a way for me to unwind, and then I could go out in the evening and have some fun. The third success metric is actually making sales. So it is a combination of, depending on the platform, it could be likes, it could be follows, it could be requests for custom work, but ultimately it's making a sale and getting paid some sort of money every month. So I want to point out it's those three success metrics. It's having fun and being creative. That's success metric number one. It's putting in some sort of time every day, every second day, or every week. And then it's actually making sales. So the reason I mention this is to try to set the expectation that if you're not making sales, especially if you're starting out, or sometimes if you've been at it for a while and you're still not making sales, you may want to just focus on the other two success metrics. Have some fun, be creative, that's success metric number one, and actually ask yourself, are you carving out enough time to do this? Because, hey, if you're a working mom and you've got 14 children and you've got 3 jobs, I get it. You're not going to be able to carve out 3 hours a night to work on Redbubble, Merch by Amazon, or Etsy. But you need to then adjust your expectations. You're not really a failure if you're spending a half an hour a week and you're making 1 sale a month. That's pretty good because your expectations are in line with what the results are. So if you thought print on demand would be fun and you're not having fun, then it's not a success. If you underestimated the effort involved, then that's not a success. And if you underestimated the amount of sales you're going to get, or overestimated rather, the amount of sales you're going to get, then to me, that's not a success. You want to make sure you have those 3 things working in tandem. So ask yourself sort of a psychological question. Ask yourself, why are we scared of failure? So it's like, why is it a big deal when you're an adult, right? When you're a kid, think back to that 4-year-old who's asking you why the sky is blue, right? We don't laugh at the kid. We don't say, oh my God, you're a dummy. You don't know why the sky's blue. Well, he's 4 years old. Of course he's not going to know why. He's got to learn, and that's by asking questions and making mistakes. Well, you're already doing the first part. You're already asking questions. And you're doing it by listening to this podcast, for example, or watching other videos on YouTube. The other way you learn is by making mistakes. It's basically experimentation. You throw something down and you see if it works. Well, I think the reason why a lot of us are scared of failure is we're really afraid of wasting time. We're afraid when we become adults that we're going to go down the rabbit hole of spending weeks, months, maybe a year in the print-on-demand space. And then after a year, we're going to say, man, we put in all this effort and we just didn't get back what we thought we were going to get back. What a waste. I think another reason why we're scared of failure is that we tend to associate effort with results. We tend to draw a very strong correlation between the amount of time and effort that we put into something and the results we get back. And the most obvious example of this would be having a job. If you're getting paid, $10 an hour and you go into work and you work for an hour, you get paid $10. Now, yes, there's taxes and deductions, blah, blah, blah. But you're not going to put in a whole bunch of effort in a job for months on end and not get paid any money. That would be very odd, right? If somebody said to you, hey, I'd like you to flip hamburgers for me for the next 3 years, and at the end of the 3 years, I might pay you something, you tell them to go jump in the lake. There's no way any sane person would take that job. But that's exactly what business owners do when they set up their own restaurant. They work every day for months and sometimes years before they wind up drawing a salary on that business. Sometimes they don't draw a salary at all, ever. The business might actually fail after a year and a half, and they've put all this time and effort in, and then the business goes up in flames, and they go, wow, I could have been earning money at a job, but instead I pursued my dream, and that business tanked. So I really think that sometimes this can be a generational thing. So I don't want to stereotype all of humanity here, but I would just use this maybe as a point of reference when we're looking at failure. I do think it's common that many baby boomers grew up in a generation, and baby boomers are typically people that grew up in the 1950s and 1960s. Baby boomers are used to, or have been used to, having a steady job their whole career. This would be like the stereotype of the dad goes to work and the mom stays at home and they have 2 kids. That's unthinkable in North America these days for a lot of families. A lot of families have 2 incomes just to make ends meet. But back in the 1950s and 1960s, dad went off to work, mom looked after 2 kids, and dad had the same job his whole life. He didn't come home and say, hey, I'm going to quit my job and set up a lemonade stand on the side of the road. He'd be laughed out of the room. Dad needed to go to work and he needed to earn money. So there's a whole generation of people. If you are a baby boomer, if you were born in the 1950s or the 1960s, don't give yourself too hard of a time if you're a little freaked out by this whole concept of print on demand. You might be sitting there thinking, okay, so I'm going to work for a year on something, like an hour a night for a year, and there's no guarantee that I'm going to get any results at the end of it. And the answer is yes, that's absolutely accurate. So it can be a mental hurdle, especially for older people, to get past and realize, oh, this is not a job. Print on demand is not a job. You don't go into work and clock in and you put in 8 hours, and so you're going to take out $80. It's not the way it works. Millennials, on the other hand, tend to skew the other way. Now, again, I'm not painting every millennial this way, but I'm saying I found in my life a lot more younger people, and millennials are typically people today in their 20s, maybe even early 30s. But they grew up in an era where it's much more common that you would have a business or a side hustle, and their metrics of success are not necessarily defined by a salary. So if you're talking to a young person, like in high school, for example, and you say to them, what do you want to do for a living? Many times they're going to say, I'd like to be a content creator. I'd like to travel the world and write a blog. Now, an older person sitting in their rocking chair thinking, this is nuts. Who on earth would ever do this? That's not a job. You should go get a job. You should go to school, go to university, get a degree, and become a doctor. That's a real job. And the reality is, a lot of younger people just don't value those same things that a lot of older people do. Now, I tend to be right in the middle. I'm what they call a Generation Xer. So I tend to be, born in the 70s. And so for me, I'm right in the middle. I can understand the value of hard work and having a job, and I can really appreciate the stability of having a solid income. But I'm also drawn to the creativity of having print on demand in my life, and selling digital designs too, and flipping comic books, and having little side businesses. I really find that really stimulates my brain because I like being creative. So I struggle with this as a Generation Xer because it's frustrating for me too when I put in a bunch of time into print on demand and I don't see any results. So what I've done is I've skewed that viewpoint so that I can sleep at night and I can say, okay, this is a hobby. This is fun for me. I'm not just going to work. This is more of a hobby. So millennials define success as freedom and creativity, whereas baby boomers will often define success as get a job, earn a stable income. So as the train pulls into the station here and we end this podcast over the next few minutes, I'm going to give you some tips on dealing with failure, because that's really, I think, why you're tuning in, is to say, hey, Zen, I'm struggling with the idea of failing. It's hard for me to get motivated to upload design after design and not see results. What can I do? So my first tip for you is to set proper expectations. Set proper expectations. I personally view print on demand as a hobby. Okay? Print on demand is fun for me. Print on demand is creative for me. And if I make sales, that's literally a bonus. I'm very grateful for every sticker I sell on Redbubble, every disc plate I sell, every sale on Etsy, every sale that comes to me, I'm very gracious about. I have a lot of gratitude in my life about it. So to me, if I don't make a sale, I don't think of it as a failure. I look at the other 2 success metrics. Am I having fun and being creative? And am I putting in the time? And I value putting in the time simply because it de-stresses me. It's like, some people like working on a coloring book. I like creating t-shirt designs. Another tip on dealing with failure is to have long-term goals that specifically are not sales. So have long-term goals, but they're not sales goals. So an example of this would be to have an output goal. So you might have a little, notebook on the fridge, a little piece of paper, and every day you're going to put down the number of print-on-demand designs that you've uploaded to a specific website. Like Etsy or Redbubble or TeePublic. So what this does is it changes your output metric in your brain. If you see this every day, the competition piece of your brain, the competitive nature, is that you're going to upload maybe 5 designs a night, depending on what tier you're in Merch by Amazon or Redbubble. But that becomes your success metric. So you can see over time on the piece of paper, if you've got 5s after 5s after 5s written down, okay, you're cooking here. Well, then you have one day when you upload 3 only, and it's like, oh, you're going to be a slightly irritated working mom going, hey, I uploaded 3. This is not sitting well with me. You have a visual representation of the goal. Now, I want to point out, none of this has to do with sales. The sales will come. You'll eventually make some money somewhere. But if you want to get successful, you need to have a success mindset, and that means having an output goal that's consistent. The other kind of long-term goal that I personally use is a time goal, and that means something like I'm going to work on it for an hour a night, or I'm going to have certain nights dedicated to YouTube, certain nights dedicated to Displate, certain nights dedicated to Redbubble, and Amazon KDP. And so I've got like a calendar, and then I have things set in my calendar. So just as an example, like Friday night after work, I'm going to be sitting down and I'm going to be working on Displate designs. I know this right now. So if somebody were to phone me up and say, hey, do you want to come out Friday night? I'd say, well, I'm kind of busy Friday night. Why don't we do it Saturday? So I'm making a commitment to myself that this is important. It's considered like me time. I look at it the same as if someone were to go for a massage or they want to watch a really good football game or a movie. I really want to work on Displate on Friday night for 90 minutes. I'm going to put the music on, or I'm going to listen to a podcast, and that's going to be me time. That's like mental spa day for Zen Watercooler. What I find is that having an output goal and having a time goal builds momentum. It becomes normalized and natural. Look at all the habits that you have in your life. You might have a favorite TV show, or you might have a favorite hobby, and you really enjoy doing it. Well, if print on demand is a favorite hobby, you're going to want to do that time and time again. So my attitude is make it fun because it builds momentum over time. Another tip I've got for dealing with failure is to have a learning mindset. Really think about that 3-year-old kid or that 4-year-old kid. They have a learning mindset. They're not embarrassed to ask questions, and they're not embarrassed to fail. Yeah, they might be scared at times, but generally speaking, they're not walking around humiliated all day long because they don't understand how to tie their shoes. So having a learning mindset means there's no actual loss. If you look at your life in terms of wins and losses, I think that can be very dangerous at times. When you get a sale, you might think that's a win. But that means when you don't get a sale, that's a loss. I don't look at it that way. To me, I either win, and that's making a sale, or I have fun, or I'm dedicating the time to it, or I learn. So I might upload a whole bunch of designs in a niche that I think is going to sell, and nothing ever sells. Okay, I learned something. Maybe I learned how to create a new design. Maybe I learned how to scale up. Maybe I'm getting good with a certain graphics design software, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I understand how to do this type of design now a whole lot better. Well, I just learned something. I learned a skill. I think that's a really healthy thing for your brain long term, to stay engaged in the world, to constantly be seeking to understand how things work. Remember, there's always another opportunity around the corner. There's always another day in the future that you can continue to work on print on demand, and you can always have the option of making a sale or the opportunity of making a sale in the future. There's always the possibility as you grow your digital farm, and that's really what print on demand is. It's a bunch of digital assets sitting online that grows over time, and what you publish today might not make a sale today, but it might make a sale a year from now. There's stuff that I've published 5 years ago that I never in a million years thought would sell now because they're not great designs. I've obviously learned how to make designs better, and all of a sudden I'll make a sale. It's like, oh my goodness, somebody somewhere liked that design enough to buy it, even though I uploaded it 3 years ago and never made a sale on it. So you never know what's going to sell. You're not going to get immediate results, but you might get results down the line. And you might also get that big win. Right around Christmas time, I was really dedicating myself to Amazon, specifically Merch by Amazon, which is like the t-shirt uploader. And I woke up one morning and I looked at my sales for that, yesterday, and I had sold 12 tote bags, which is pretty obscure, right? Like you're not selling a lot of tote bags on Merch by Amazon, but I sold 12 tote bags, all the same design, And it instantly clicked with me, oh, somebody in an office somewhere at Christmas bought these as a thank you for their staff. It was kind of a workplace office design, like a funny office workplace design. And I thought, oh, interesting. I had uploaded that design like a year and a half earlier, and I'd never seen a sale on it. And all of a sudden I sold 12. So you never know what's going to sell, right? There's always going to be somebody out there looking for certain things, and it won't exactly reconcile to when you've uploaded it. So my last little piece here is that if you're just starting out in print on demand, or if you're struggling in print on demand, here's the approach you can use. I would recommend what I call a shotgun approach. And a shotgun approach just means, when a shotgun is fired, the pellets come out in a big spray. They don't come out like one bullet. They spray forward. So having a shotgun approach in print on demand means starting up maybe 3 or 4 different platforms. So maybe, start up a Redbubble shop, get accepted on Merch by Amazon, sell on Etsy, have 3 or 4 platforms like TeePublic, Display. See which ones you like the most. Dedicate a little bit of time to each of them over maybe a 90-day window and see which ones you really enjoy. Then, when you have 3 or 4 of these bases set up, see what sells. You're going to make a sale eventually. So you plug away on these, you're grinding away on it, and then eventually you make a few sales and you realize, oh, one of these platforms has risen to the top of my queue in terms of fun and time and sales. So it's like, okay, then specialize. Specialize and grow your favorite streams of potential income. Now, what does that mean for the other streams of income? Yeah, you might occasionally work on them, but essentially you failed. And that's okay, because you don't know at the start which platforms are going to take off for you and which ones aren't. I'm on threads on Reddit. So Reddit is like a social media thing where people can post comments. I'm not as good on Merch by Amazon as I would like to be. So I will often read on Reddit Merch by Amazon sales just to get inspired. There are some people on Merch by Amazon that are selling $1,200, $1,500, even one guy sold $4,000 on Merch by Amazon in 1 month. So does that make me a failure because I'm not selling $4,000 every month on Merch by Amazon? Absolutely not. It means I'm growing and I'm learning. This guy who's selling $4,000 a month on Merch by Amazon is just farther down the road than I am. And so I can use that as inspiration to grow my print on demand journey. We're all walking down the same path. Just some of us are farther ahead than others. And if you continue down the path, eventually you'll get to the point where someone is going, wow, I can't believe you're doing so well. I'm a failure. And you can look at them and you can say, you're not a failure. I was just like you. So I hope you found this helpful. I'm a big fan of print on demand. And if you like this podcast, I'd love it if you would leave a comment or ask a question, whatever you like. I'm happy to help. And if you have a suggestion for a future podcast, let me know. I would absolutely love to provide value for you. And because I value you. Thank you. All right. Enjoy your day, everybody. I believe in you. You can do this. You're an artist. So have fun, be creative, put in the time, and the results will come. Thanks a lot for listening.